Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. I am extra excited about the guy who's joining me today because not only is he just really, truly, I think, a living legend. I think he's one of the greatest business authors of our day. I think people will be looking back and referencing his stuff, years and years and years into the future. And we got him here right now, and he's going to join us right now. He's also just an absolutely big-hearted, excellent, loving, wonderful human being. And I know that from personal experience over more than a decade. This guy has made a difference for me that I can never, there aren't even words for it, not even for a wordy guy like me. And he was my first guest, and now he's back, and he's episode number 69, just randomly, which makes total sense.
I love how you added these just randomly.
Because it's Mike Michalowicz. Welcome, Mike.
Dude, you just filleted my big fat ego in the worst.
Well,
I was like, oh my God, you invited Jesus Christ on.
Yeah. Well, now with the beard, you even look like him.
A little bit. I mean, listen, I think you got a little bit more going on than I do. A lot more. But thank you for those kind words. I do know they're sincere.
Mark, they're from Mike. They're from the bottom of my heart.
I know they are. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's a big deal to me. And I'm sending you a lot of love back. And I do appreciate you. And I said, this is going to be 60 something this episode. I'm like, it's got to be 69. It's got to be 69. Oh. So I like how you threw it randomly. It's episode 69.
There you go.
I am such a child. I cannot prevent myself. It's hard.
Listen, it's, I think that there's something to your new book that's sort of like, it makes me think of your new book, which is Get Different, which I think is fabulous. It was a slap in the face for me in just a really good way. And I think one of the messages from your book is just be yourself, right? I mean, Mike, that inner child of yours that gets this, gets control of things on a pretty regular basis. We love it.
I know. You've been at meetings where I just kind of ruin the meeting. Yeah. So Get Different, ironically, when people have heard that title and talked to me about it, they said, oh, get different means be different. And no. It's actually be you, be more of you, which gets that differentiation from everyone else.
Yeah.
I think there's this sense that we must comply with everything else, that if we look at our contemporaries, if we look at our competitors and we do the same as them, therefore we'll elevate to the same level, but we actually degrade to the same level. We become invisible. So what I realize is until someone does business with you, John, or me, or the person listening, until someone does business with you, the only experience they have with you is your marketing. And therefore, if it's this...
that hurt.
It hurt, right? So the marketing, and this is who this person is. Your marketing is judging their experience. Should that marketing lead to the transaction of now experiencing you, if there's an incongruency, they're like, oh, this person's a liar, or at least minimally, there's something off here, which is really a bad situation to be in. Yeah. All my marketing is deliberately consistent with who I am. It's playful. It is silly. It's goofy. It is not for everyone, and I'm not for everyone. But I also know that when someone engages that level, when they come through, it's such a fluid and frictionless experience. Like, this is exactly who I was looking for.
Yeah.
The ultimate compliment I got was I got a call years back from a college buddy. He was in the same fraternity as me. And he said, Mike, you would never believe this. He goes, I was reading this book, and as I'm reading it, it's a business book. He's like, I was just laughing. Like, this sounds so much like my old fraternity brother, Mike Michalowicz. Like, this guy is the same kind of idiot. And I love it, and I'm learning. And he said, I wonder who wrote this book. And he's like, holy crap, it was your name. It was your name. And he says, I can't believe it. And I said, this is the biggest compliment of my life. That someone knew me 20 years ago or 30 years ago says, oh my gosh, I know this guy. That means to me I'm being true to myself.
Yes.
And for all of us, that's the essence of our marketing. Don't placate. Don't modify who you are. Double down on who you are.
Yeah. Well, it's the same message that I think, especially a lot of the people listening here have heard me talk about, which is that's the same messages start with why. I think that, that, it's not cast about and find some random why and then start there. No, it's go look deeply into who you actually are, what you actually care about and have cared about for a long time. And then, as you said, double down on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fabulous. Well, the other thing in Get Different that I want to talk about, and then I want to talk about what's happened since you were on the show last, right? The whole world seems to have gone crazy. We were through a pandemic. Like, let's talk about some of the lessons of that. But before we do that, another big message in Get Different that really was a slap in the face for me, in a good way, was this whole message of, if you have something really good and you don't market it, you're ripping people off. And here's the hardest part for me, Mike. I was telling this to people in Finland a few years ago, Finland, because they're like, we've got the greatest technology and we've got the greatest products, but no one knows about them. Right? Like, we just can't sell. And I was like, well, okay, so you're just totally willing to rip the entire world off by having the best stuff and then not being willing to market it well enough that we know about it. Get over yourselves, right? Yeah. And meanwhile, I'm pointing at them and 3 fingers are pointing back at me. And I didn't recognize those fingers till I read Get Different. And then I was like, oh, slap, 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 right?
Yeah. I like to elicit that emotion. You and I were in that retreat. You and I were at that retreat with Sabrina Starling.
Dr. Sabrina Starling, fabulous. Yeah. Tap the potential.
Yeah, in Louisiana. Yes. Thank God, this time of year, the weather's beautiful.
Oh my gosh, that was fabulous.
So there's one guy in our group. His first name is it Ed, the lawn guy? Was it Ed? Oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed now.
That's okay.
All right, let's just say it was Ed. There was a group of us.
We're maintaining his confidentiality.
Yeah, right. Ed, the lawn guy. And he goes and he shares what he's doing. And it's extraordinarily powerful. He's talking about his care below what you see, the grass and the earth.
Yes.
Right. He's sharing all this stuff. And he's like, but I'm struggling with marketing. I pull him outside and I said, he goes, what's the key to marketing? I said, I'll tell you. I said, I'm ashamed of you. And I leaned into him. I said, I used filthy language too, because I wanted to get him angry.
You do that
F you.
Yeah.
I said, are you saying there's people out there putting poison on the ground? He's like, absolutely. I'm like, and you allow that?
Yeah.
Shame on you.
Yes.
You're a scumbag for that. I thought you care about us. And like, he's getting all riled up. I'm like, that's the energy we need. Different isn't about just getting noticed and just building your business. That's a beautiful kind of component or side benefit. But the bigger benefit is if you're truly benefiting people in a better way, you care more, your service is better, it's more environmentally responsible. There's 100 different reasons. If that's really true, damn it, we must get noticed. And we got to be angry at ourselves and the world for not expressing that. And I hope that mustard stayed with him. I hope he's like, damn it, this is my job. It's my form of a rallying cry. It's sometimes to shake people up that way.
And listen, and I love it. And because I have a particular focus and concern with regenerative agriculture, man, I'm right there behind you. I want him to be vastly more successful. I think his name is Don.
It was Don. It was Don.
Yes.
Don.
And I think he's in Ohio somewhere.
Cleveland area. Does that sound right?
So if you're in Cleveland and you're listening to this, I wish I could run upstairs because I've got his sticker on my
the worm guy. That was his little thing.
Yeah.
So one thing as we were talking about this, he says, well, I don't know how to be different. Everyone, puts the postcards out. I'm like, well, what matters to you most? Talking about marketing consistency, being consistent with your service, what you offer. We care about most. He's like, it's the lawn is more than the grass. It's what's happening inches down. And I said, yes. Don, here's an idea. go to a prospect and show them 2 slices of lawn, your beautiful green lawn and then the pesticide-ridden chemical lawn, and show how vibrant green yours is and the other one is. And say to your customers, here's what everyone's noticing, but this is not what we notice. And then flip it over on the other side, show the organic life, the worms and all the stuff that's coming to life under a healthy lawn, and the other one where it's just this barren wasteland. That's different.
Yes.
And I hope that, here's the thing. I walked away, we mentioned to the group, everyone's pumped. He's like, that's it. I fear he won't do it. There's this devil that sits on our shoulder. There's a devil there that says, yeah, but you're going to be ridiculed. You're going to be made fun of. You're going to embarrass yourself. It's better to be not noticed and not embarrassed than it is to be noticed and someone be laughing at you.
Yeah.
And many of us walk away from our responsibility of marketing because of that fear. And that's the challenge we have to overcome.
Well, I just did a piece where I talked about how it's always, in my opinion, Mike, it's always an act of great courage and generosity to stand up and say something in service of something that matters to you. It's never a fearless thing.
Yeah.
Because it's super dangerous to get noticed by the group. Look what happened to Jesus and Joan of Arc and Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy and Socrates and on, right? So we're scared to get noticed. We're scared to stand out. And so, that very title of your book is just abjectly terrifying. Get different. Like, that's the last thing I want to do, right? I'll get thrown out of the tribe. But when something matters more to you than your fear, boy, that's an act of courage and an act of generosity that is just dramatically inspiring.
That's the tipping point on that old judicial weight system, right? When you put just one extra coin, all of a sudden it all flips over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once we realize that marketing is the ultimate act of kindness, that is when that transformational moment happens, because it surmounts that fear.
Yes.
In the book, and you and I don't know if everyone knows here, you are my speaking coach. You're my go-to guy. I get a call from the PPA, which is the Professional Photographers Association of America. There's 6,000 people that are going to be attending this live keynote, and I'm the opening keynote guy. So the very first thing I do is dial John Bates 911, right?
Thank you.
I'm like, dude, coach me. And we start constructing this presentation.
Yeah.
The big component is tipping that scale.
Yeah.
It happens all levels. Like, someone will say, I'm just a photographer. What I do doesn't matter that much. And maybe I should just fit in. The long guy, okay, I can see it's a little bit of a stretch, but at least he's saving the environment. But what do I do? Once you look at the why, Simon Sinek's purpose behind it, you're preserving people's history. You're presenting them in something that could be extremely memorable and important. It could be something that could be reflected on for decades or even centuries to come if it goes through generationally.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. I think we also have to realize we all are a big deal. The coaching you do, John, I know you're working with Casey, is transforming her perception and presentation of herself, which will then have a cascading effect to all the people she's of service to.
Yeah.
What you do is magnificently important. I think once we elevate the importance and truly are clear on that, then we can start diminishing that fear. The fear is still going to be there, but the call to glory or the call to service becomes so great that we lose that. What you like to say, don't be nervous, be of service.
Yeah.
We overcome that nervousness.
Yes. Yeah. We step through it, right? Like it's there, but you just
when I went on stage at PPA, I think I wet my trousers. Like thank God I was wearing dark clothing so you couldn't see.
Yeah.
But the nerves start racing. It's something we're never going to overcome. So I think it is a fool's folly to think one day I won't be fearful, and that's when I'll start being different.
Yeah.
One day I won't be nervous.
No.
Never, ever.
Not going to happen.
No.
So, and Mike, just because I think it's so brilliant, tell us about your idea for the photographers that you gave them to market differently for photographers. I love that idea.
Yeah, we came up with a few. I think you're thinking about the frame one.
Yes.
One? Okay.
Yeah.
So one technique to get different is you look at what your competition's doing or the alternatives, sometimes your contemporaries. In authorship, there really is no competition. There's contemporaries. Other people write books.
Good way to see it.
Yeah. But look at the people in your biosphere and see what the common approach is. One technique is you take the established approach and you simply flip it. You do something opposite of it or something outside of the scope. Most photographers, I'm sure, John, you've experienced this, send out their favorite portrait. So you get a little postcard that has like this cheesy family shot with the fall leaves and the lake behind them. And they're like,
I actually got one that was so good. I just framed it and put
Did you really?
No, I'm kidding.
No. That's a good one.
Yeah, no, I'm kidding.
But you know what they're doing? They're sending their favorite picture and say, family portrait time, let's do yours.
Yeah.
Here's the problem with that. Even if the picture is frameable, it's such common noise, it's ignorable. We become habituated to it. There's a part of our mind that says, I've seen this before, it's irrelevant, then it's going to be irrelevant forevermore.
Yeah.
So what we did with these photographers, I said, well, what don't people do? Or where does a picture go in? They say it goes in frames. And I said, well, who sends frames out? And someone said, we never send out frames. Like, who would do that? And I'm like, oh, that's if you could say who would do that, that's probably an opportunity.
There you go.
So what we did is we had one photographer send out frames. And it was an empty frame, which already is different, right? So it triggers that when you receive an empty frame, you're like, what's going on here? If we can get our prospect to say, what is this or what's going on? It means they have to digest it. That's the response to different.
Yeah.
Then it had the full framework. So in my framework for get different is first differentiate, then attract, and finally direct. So different was the frame, unexpected.
Yeah.
The attract was the message inside. So inside there was no picture, but it said, most pictures go into the cloud. The ones you cherish go into frames. We create the ones you will cherish, right?
Beautiful.
So it's like, oh, I get it now. And for the people who want to preserve their history and photographs, say, yeah, I want to cherish this. That's attractive. Then I had direct. It said, schedule your appointment today. It told them explicitly the one action to take. And that was a very successful campaign.
Yeah.
And it continues to be. And here's the ironic thing. I told that to 6,000 photographers. I have gotten 0 stories of implementation. I asked someone, hey, if you do this, we got one photographer in the world doing this, you probably can use this too. Email me your success story. Gave my email, zilcho, squatola. That's the fear of getting.
That's too bad.
I know. Isn't that a shame?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and listen, that is the power of fear to just interfere, right? So, well, that comes back to that thing of sitting down, maybe, having a sit down with yourself and just getting the value of what you bring into the world, and not in some kind of pound your chest, like inauthentic, artificial, oh, I'm so great, but to just go back and Mike, I actually have a file that I call Sunshine in both my email and in my file drawer. And when people send me thank you notes or you made a difference for me notes or things like that, I actually tag those things Sunshine, or I put the physical things in my drawer in that folder. And when I'm having a hard day, I go back and I look at that stuff. And I think that might be a really good move for people when they're thinking about their marketing too, right? Go really get underneath the difference that you make in what you do, how much you genuinely care, and then make sure you're communicating that to the people who really need you and could use you, right?
The key to that avatar part to me is you have to know the community you're serving to. I'll tell you the one of the nails in the coffin for small business progress is when you ask someone, who do you serve? Like, oh, anybody and everybody. When I hear that, I'm like, oh my gosh. And we all know this, it waters us down. Yeah. And it also says to that prospect, you don't care about them enough to know them. So we have these watered down messages and we don't know them. But the more specific your prospect or avatar, the clearer you understand them, they start to get that you get them. Let me give you an example. Imagine going to you have a heart attack. I wish upon no one, but say you have a heart attack and you go to the doctor and the doctor comes to you and she says, all right, I'm ready to start the surgery, this process. I've never done this before. I'm trying to really expand my base of customers. I'm catering to pediatrics and elder care and stuff. She goes, but I got this. I'm really excited about doing this. You ready to roll? You'd be like, F no. When your life is on the line, you don't want to be the first participant in the exercise, probably not even the 6th or 7th. Now, reframe that. Say you go to a heart surgeon and she says, I've done 1,000 of these procedures. That's all I do. I do about one every 3 days. My success rate is about 97% of the chance of survivability. Your specific case, I think we're near 100% because I've seen this before and I know exactly what to do. I charge a premium for this, but I think I will save your life because I've done it so many times.
Yeah.
There's extreme confidence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Premium, no problem. When our life is on the line, we will go to someone that's shown efficiency and understands our situation intimately. If you are a generalist, you will attract the general audience. Shockingly, maybe there's someone that says, you know what, I want the cheap heart surgery deal, I'll go for it.
Yeah.
But it's people that don't value their life. There's others who value their business and they see the decision in hiring you as critical to the impact on their life. They then want the experts. So don't be a generalist. You'll attract the general audience who really doesn't care. Be a specialist. You'll attract the specialized need audience who's ready and willing to pay a premium and wants someone that does this procedure over and over again successfully.
Yeah, I think that's an extremely good analogy. Yeah.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah, you're my pleasure. So, I mean, and the other thing, just to toss it back to one of your other great books is, if somebody is in that generalist position and they're having a hard time honing their message and figuring out what they do, pumpkin plan, right?
Yeah. So, I wrote the pumpkin plan to help facilitate organic growth. Every book I've written, John, has been admittedly a challenge I've faced historically in my own businesses.
Yeah.
And I've devoted for me, an extraordinary amount of time investigating, what works for others, what processes can I test in my own businesses, and then once I find that works successfully, deploy it. What is the fundamental truths? What I found when it came to organic growth, part of the pumpkin plan strategy is to identify who your historical best customers are. And historical best customers are ones who value you, demonstrated usually through how much they pay.
Yeah.
Secondly, are the ones that you also enjoy serving. So you can have a client that pays you well, but you think they're a jerk. Probably not someone you want to clone.
Yeah.
Other ones don't pay you well at all. You love them, but you're losing money. Probably not good. There's probably a small mix of customers that are great customers. They pay you well and you love working with. Those customers are a vantage point, a wedge, if you will, breaking the ice into opportunity. So what we do is once we identify who our best customers are, we learn about their market. I'll give you an example just for you because I know you so well.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I am, but say I'm one of your higher paying customers. I don't think I am, but say I was, and say you love working with me. Then opportunity now is to say, oh, maybe I can clone Mike. Well, the truth is birds of a feather flock together. I know a lot of other Mikes.
Yeah.
So maybe you could be a speaking coach for authors that are in the nonfiction business space. But what happens now is then you start intimately learning this space and you become the de facto guy.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you become that heart surgeon where people say, oh, you're a business guy, a business author who's looking for a speaking coach. There's only one guy. He's the heart surgeon. His name is John Bates.
There you go.
And so that's how we do it. I'm not saying a good customer that you like represents initially a good niche, but they are a shortcut to discovering that niche. And often, if we have one good customer, there's others out there just like them, and they know them.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you can get clear on what their world is like and how to talk very directly to them. And like you said, become that heart surgeon. So listen, Mike, I said we would also talk about kind of what's happened since we talked last. And I think you and I talked last basically like right at the beginning or just before the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah.
I think it's, or is it, or was it, we were already maybe slightly in?
Maybe we're slightly in it.
So, but I mean, that represents one of the biggest disruptions in the history of the world as we know it. That you and I have lived through. And I think that there have been a lot of really big lessons and things that you've learned. Because I know that, I remember when it first started, you were really a proponent of and doing a lot of just kindness reach outs and just check in things. And I was very, very inspired by your approach and what you were doing. And I know that it's impacted your business. It's impacted my business. You talk to a lot of people who have businesses that have been impacted. what are some of the takeaways? You and I talked actually in September of 2020. So, we were in basically happened in March. By September, we all realized it wasn't going to be over by June.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's cast back a little bit and tell me some of the bigger beats of, from your vantage point, what are some things you saw, some lessons, some interesting stories?
Yeah. So what I saw is, there is the short-term reactionary responders and then the long-term adjusters. And what was interesting is the reactionary people started to jump, and often die out. And the more strategic plan folks survive. So I'll give you some example in restaurants. There's a lot of restaurants in our neighborhood. And what I saw most of them is like, well, first of all, there's a pandemic and they're shutting down restaurants. So I'm just going to close my doors and wait this out. And then someone said, oh God, I'm not making any money. I got to start doing takeout. And everyone starts doing takeout. Some of them weren't making enough money to survive and they went out of business. Other ones I saw with these hyper responders was, there was one company that was lauded. It was a restaurant who said, our community's suffering. We're going to be the contributors. We're going to give food out to people that need it and give discounts because there's people losing their jobs and their small businesses struggling. And they gave for 2 weeks and then they were out of business because they depleted all their funds.
Oops.
And yeah. And so the community is like, oh my God, they're the best company ever. And I'm like, F them. They're martyrs. Yeah. They're martyrs. What they did sounds heroic, but it was the death. I wish that company was still around today. They are noble, good people, but they weren't intelligent in their decision-making and it hurt others. They hurt
the whole community.
Hurt the whole community.
Them go out of business.
But there were certain businesses that became sustainable. I think one of that most impressed me was this restaurant who said, okay, we can't have a dining space. We're going to do takeout. Today, even though they've opened restaurants again, they still only do takeout. But they realize that they can distribute food faster than ever before if they team up with a food truck. So what they do is they stock all their food in this food truck, by 4 in the afternoon or 3 in the afternoon. And then they do an email blast out and say, well, you can have food delivered in the next 5 minutes. So people come home and say, what are you going to do for dinner tonight? Like, oh, I'd love to get food. Well, takeout, you got to wait 40 minutes. You got to drive there because delivery guys. No, this one restaurant will get the great meal on your table in 5 minutes. They just have this food truck pinging around ready to roll. Well, they dominated the space and they're of greater service and they're sustainable and they're more profitable than ever before.
Yeah.
Another one, I'm getting all soapboxy here.
Listen, behind you, we're just people can only hear us, but behind you, it says Eradicate Entrepreneurial.
Oh, yeah. See that there?
I know that you are super
This is my home
passionate.
office. Yeah. I have, it's kind of crazy. I have 3 offices, 2 that I actively use, but in every office I have that message. It's a reminder of my life's purpose. That's why I get so jacked up.
Yes, I love it.
There's this other restaurant who they said, well, people are losing not just the restaurant, they're losing the experience with our food and they're losing the communal experience. You come to our place and everyone's family type thing. So what they did is they started calling out their past customers, their past lists and saying, hey, what if we teach you how to make our food over a Zoom meeting? It's a cooking class and you'll be able to see other people in your community. And they're signing up, 15 or 20 families. Now it's a Friday night where they deliver the ingredients to you. You're cooking for 2 or 3 hours. You're talking to other families there. There's a master chef. It became this immersive experience.
That's so cool.
The kitchen they need in the whole restaurant facility that was costing them thousands and thousands a month just went down to a little kitchen studio, which was a few $100s, I think, a month. And the income and the profitability was off the charts. What I found is when there's significant change, there's all this kind of ripple effects out. When there's a gold rush, people need jeans. When there is a COVID pandemic, people still need connection, but in a new way.
Yeah.
And that's what these restaurants started doing that were very successful.
Yeah. That's really interesting. That's really cool. I mean, I do think that was one of the big connection was one of the big things that just got whacked, and things that brought us connection were just really special.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think that's the big experience around COVID is, there was this massive rise in people needing therapists and so forth because we're effing lonely. It is effing.
Yeah.
I was tired within a day of working from this office in my house. And I'm like, I got to get back in.
Yeah.
And maybe that's how I'm wired. But we reopened the office, I think 2 weeks after the COVID pandemic shutdowns illegally. We opened it with everyone masked, and we continued on. And our little business, I think, continued its success because we had those cooler talks still. We still had that connection. The group could vibe. So I think when there's shift, we have to ask ourselves, what are we losing? What are we gaining? And then can we play into that in some new capacity?
Yeah. Yeah. So, from the direct vantage point of the impact on your company, that's one really interesting anecdote of just, look, let's wear masks and still be together. What was there anything else that you personally learned?
Sure.
What about one of those? Because listen, I know I had my dark moments in the whole COVID thing and nights when I was up just going, okay, how am I going to keep this thing going? Did you ever have any moments?
Oh, totally. Oh, dude, we were talking about, as I was recording the war, the invasion by Russia into Ukraine, and right, so that stuff weighs my mind. And there's moments I'm like, okay, it's all over. Like the nuke bombs are coming.
Yeah.
But what I do to avoid getting stuck in that is either it is going to happen, and what can I do to prepare? And there are certain things like the COVID pandemic. I said, I may get COVID and it may kill me. What can I do to prepare? And with a nuclear war, I don't know if I can do much. With COVID, I can take certain measurements that I believed were helpful. I got vaccinated. I got the masks and so forth. And I hope it improved the odds. But there's a certain point where I can't take it any further. And that's when I just say, either it's going to happen or this too shall pass. It's always those two options. Either the worst is going to happen. So that's my mental game for managing.
That's a good one.
But what I found in my business, I regularly ask myself, and how I do it is by just observing. I ask myself, like, what's the opportunity here? Well, what happened was, I remember when the COVID pandemic hit, it was March, I think it was 15th or 16th. I remember the moment, not the day exactly.
Yeah.
I was in a car with a guy named John Gordon. I assembled a group of authors I admire. Don Miller, the author of StoryBrand, James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, Ryan Holiday, and others. And I gathered this group, and the idea was to do this big download of the best we know to share and support each other. We physically congregated, and I was with John Gordon. We're driving to the event. It was actually at Don Miller's house. And as we're driving there, his phone pops up and he goes, oh, shoot, I just lost a speaking engagement. My agent just told me I lost the COVID pandemic. And I'm like, what? And he goes, oh my God, I just lost another one. By the time we got there, he lost like 3 to 4 gigs. Yeah. And I remember in my mind going, whew, at least I'm not being affected by COVID. Well, that night when I got back to my hotel, my agent wasn't sending emails. She left me a voicemail that says, oh, you lost 7 gigs. Wow. It just fell off a cliff. It was gone.
Yeah.
So the first panic ensues, and that's normal. And I said, okay, let me just go through my little artsy-fartsy panic. And then I said, well, what now? Well, what happened is everyone moved to a virtual format. And what's interesting is when a new format comes around, there is this little bit of this Wild West grab. Yeah. There was notable speakers who get paid a massive premium for the great work they do, who all of a sudden drop their price. I would say for the first 3 to 6 months of the COVID pandemic, people dropped their trousers and said, I'll do it for free. Yeah. So when people were inquiring, Mike, would you speak? And I get $35,000 to speak. And my agent's like, he's 35. Like, are you kidding me? I can get, famous name for zero.
Yeah.
So it requires fortitude. But at the same time, I said, there's no sustainability in zero. I cannot fathom in world history people sustaining by not charging something for the work they do. Yep. So I know it's just a matter of time. So we had fortitude. But during that period of time, I started investigating what would make me exceptional. Most speakers, as I'm presenting to you, this is the setup. Well, this is not my studio office. Yeah. In my studio office, we set up 3 cameras. I hired a photographer who set up the lighting properly. We have an overhead projector. I can do a live presentation over any media feed and control it. I can even add sound effects. Yeah. And now I had this super engaging presentation. And then the opportunity started to come like, well, what does Mike charge now? $35,000. Yeah. And he delivers at a level that no one else is delivering. He's not at his kitchen table. Yeah. And that became a game changer. I don't know if there's lessons there as much as is whatever the new medium is, if that is what your primary presentation medium or delivery medium is, get good at it real quickly. It was shocking to me how many professional speakers had an unprofessional setup.
Yeah. Yeah, boy, I remember that moment. I was
scary.
Oh my gosh. What I remember is the announcement coming over that South by Southwest had canceled the event.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, here we go. And by that afternoon, I had lost, a lot of gigs too. I had lost several gigs that were a lot of money to me. And then it was just on like Donkey Kong, right?
I went through, I guess, the 7 stages of grief. I remember the denial phase. I remember the denial phase. I couldn't believe it. I got a call from my publisher, which is Penguin Books, and the publisher is like the president of the company. They go by title president for the imprint. So this guy calls me. His name's Adrian, and he goes, Mike, you're about to launch a book, Fix This Next. He goes, do you want to continue with this, or do you want to follow other authors and not launch? And I'm like, I got to double down now because Fix This Next speaks to dynamic change. Yeah. And we did. But he also said something where I went into denial. He goes, we're closing the offices because I don't want people to die here. And I was like, oh my God, Mr. Drama. I didn't say that, but in my head, I'm like, people die. I'm like, this is a little cold going around. Right. Now that was March, 12, right when it was breaking. And I'm like, this is so absurd. And so I didn't listen to the cue that a major corporation was taking a major action and thinking, well, maybe a lot of other big companies, and there's going to be an effect playing out. Yep. I try to stay business as normal. And I think that hurt me a little bit because I delayed listening. Yeah. But that's how that played out for me, the very beginning.
Yeah. So, how about one more story about somebody who found a silver lining in this whole thing? Does anything come to mind?
In the COVID pandemic? Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. So, well, okay. So I worked with a lot of therapists, and I remember Ernestina Perez. She serves the Latinx community. Latinx, if you're not familiar with that term, is someone who's of Spanish descent, first generation Mexican or Latin in some capacity, and living an American lifestyle, which means at work you're American, at home you're Latin. And so there's this kind of polar experience going on. Yeah. And just like any other human being, they need therapy too, but they have a unique need. Well, there was this surge in demand for therapists during this period because people were getting so just having mental challenges. Yeah. Ernestina, what she noticed was the problem she had was while there's more demand, it's not my community. She was getting calls from everywhere, which actually started diluting her. It's interesting that someone was able to do this, that they saw demand, but it was the wrong type of demand, meaning people were approaching her for the need, but the right community that she could serve best was getting squashed out. They were approaching, but she didn't have time for them. Right. So she reoriented her business during the pandemic. She did this through special marketing. She started speaking to this community and pivoted her business. What was fascinating was the end result. Her business was she was a solo practitioner. She was getting these leads, but a lot of them were ghosting because they're like, I don't really know if I need a therapist. I felt like I needed one yesterday, but ghosting. Once she started speaking to the Latinx community and was able to relate, this is the heart surgeon saying, I've done this surgery 1,000 times before. Yes. People started saying, you're the one I need. And they weren't ghosting. She went from, I think it was like 2 or 3 new patients, I should say, a month, which is flatlining because you usually lose 2 or 3 a month, to all of a sudden gaining 30 a month. Her solo practitioner business, which she was like that for 3 years, going into the COVID pandemic, about 6 months to a year in figuring out she's squashing her target community, went from 1 therapist herself to 8 therapists, $1 million business. What was interesting to me is the fortitude that not all demand is good demand. You got to cater to your right community. And she leaned into the COVID pandemic in a right way, and it really served her and served her clients the best.
Well, and Mike, I know that story, right? And that story is a Get Different story, and it's a story of not listening to the devil on your shoulder that's telling you tell us that story, because it's such a great story. It's so here's what imagine being Ernestina and making this decision with all the worries that one would have of like, oh, but I have this degree and people take me seriously. And tell us,
you got lead flow, you got opportunities that are coming in. It's just not working out. You be more professional about it. So when she said she needs to approach the Latinx community, we generated concepts of like, how do you get heard by them? You can't go into the standard approach, and there was no marketing platform. There's no directory for people in the Latinx community needing therapists. Yeah. But there is the YouTube. channel, which we all go to, and it's very segmented toward communities. If you're interested in auto racing, you can find your community, and if you're interested in basket weaving, they got it. They probably do have the underwater basket weaving.
Basket weaving, yeah.
So she created a video that was what's called a reaction video to the 90 Day Fiancé, which is a trash reality TV show of a couple going through a hyperspeed relationship toward marriage, and it's calamity ensues. Well, there's one particular episode where it was a Latinx couple, perfect, who she caters to. Now, the rule, the moral and probably professional obligation of therapists is you can't disclose what clients and patients you're seeing, and you can't tell what you're doing. That's off limits. But you can observe public information. So this show is public. So she did a reaction video where here's someone in the most professional demeanor trying to explain why the wife to be splashing water in the husband to be's face is probably not the best approach. And that was just one element, the swearing and back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, it was funny in that she had to maintain that demeanor, but it was powerful in that she could connect with their story. That video went viral, but I gave context. I'm not saying the world saw it. You and I never saw it, and anyone listening probably never saw it. But for her community, it went viral. She got 2,000 views in the first week or two, which comparatively, her most popular video had 100x views, and it was a tour of her office, and it was just her watching over and over. Does this still play?
Yeah.
She got 2,000 views. She converted she got 32 prospects, converted 28 from a 2-week video in 2 weeks, and her business went.
Boom. Yeah.
I spoke with her just about a week ago because I'm like, I haven't spoken to you in 2 years. What's the update? She's like, oh, we have 8 therapists now. It's over $1 million practice. I'm like, you still doing the video? She's like, yeah, that's all I do. I was like,
Yeah.
And a little bit of me said, you're welcome, Ernestina. You're freaking welcome.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of her. And she was able to leverage demand, but channel those sales to the community that that captured that momentum.
Yeah. So fabulous. So fabulous. So, great stuff. I think useful for all of us. And so before we go, Mike, I don't know if I've ever asked you this, but who is one of the people that made a difference for you in your leadership, in your communication, in business? Like, who's one of your big heroes? And what did they teach you?
My first ever business coach, his name's Frank Miniatolo, who's quite elderly and ill now, but he was the first guy. So there is a clear delineation of, on how you need to approach business as it grows. I grew my first business to $1 million, and I'll tell you, it ain't easy. But if you simply grind and hustle enough and you try enough things, getting to $1 million for most businesses is a doable thing. Just pure ignorance. The second stage of growth is usually focusing and concentrating on a type of customer, like make that repeatability. But the next stage of growth becomes about strategic decision-making, really analyzing, because any decision you're making has a amplitude effect. You're not making decisions on onesie twosies anymore. Now it's like, this will affect 20% of my customer base if I do this and 30% if I do that. You got to be much more strategic. You need to slow the roll. Frank was excellent at this.
Yeah.
I have a high energy level. I'm like, just hustle more. And the problem is it worked in the beginning, right? If I worked longer hours, I could make more money. So clearly that works. Yeah, it does till it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then repeating that is actually the worst thing to do because it triggers frustration and stagnation.
Yeah.
So Frank came in and just started bringing about this concept of strategic analysis, slowing the roll, identifying the few moves that were big moves that would start pushing things forward. And I deployed that. My second company moved so much faster. It grew to 7 million in 2.5 years, exited to Fortune 500.
Yeah.
But those lessons, that was attributed to Frank, but those lessons still sit with me today. As my businesses grow or get stuck, I'm like, that's a strategic problem now, or it's early stage hustle problem. And that was very helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tell us his name again.
Frank Miniatolo.
Cool.
From New Jersey.
Yeah, I love it.
No, he didn't talk like that at all. He was actually super fun. He wore a suit. Like, you go to hey, let's go out to lunch at Burger King, and he's like, oh, I got to throw my suit on. Like, he was that type of guy.
Oh, I love that. I'm not that, but I love that. I
love it. Freaking strategic and drawing things out, but also like hysterical. I remember once, like, we're talking strategy and I'm like, I just got to hustle harder and do this. And he looks away and he looks at me and goes, are you going to be that old guy with one nut hanging out of your shorts at the end? I'm like, Frank, what the hell are you doing? That visual is horrible. He's like, that's where you're going. You're going to end up in a rusty lawn chair with your nut hanging out if you keep doing this. He goes, slow down, get strategic. Let's talk strategy, not reaction. I'm like, oh.
Wow.
So yeah, he was funny.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
That visual is horrible. I can still see that scraggly.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Oh
my God. My God.
Well, yeah. I mean, that'll
shock you. That'll shock you.
And keep you from wanting to be that guy.
Yes.
So I know we just got a couple minutes left. Is there anything else? Like, I mean, I just want to say, first of all, you agreed to be the first guest on this podcast back when I had 0 listeners and nothing going on. And I just really, really appreciate that. And I really appreciate you coming back to check in with me. I can barely believe that I'm 69 episodes in and still, got a whole bunch more scheduled already.
Yeah.
And this has just been a really, really fun ride. And, I think that when guest number 2 saw you were guest number 1 and guest number 3 and 4 saw that, like, it made it easier for me. So thank you. And I just wonder if there's anything else that you'd like to say before we, Dude,
I love you, bro. And this is, listeners, listen in. I love this man, John Bates. I remember the very, very first time we met, which you may have not even saw me, was through Elizabeth Berry. I was at her Hoboken apartment and preparing for TEDx. And she's like, we got this coach on. And I'm like, oh God, do I have to listen to this bullshit? And you start going on. And I'm like, I don't need this. I know this. And then when your presentation ended and Mr. Know-It-All Michalowicz here said, I don't need this. Then Elizabeth said, everyone's got to work with John for at least one session. I'm like, oh, I'm beyond this. That one session transformed my life. I didn't know a speech was a performance. I didn't get that. And from that day forward, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy can help me elevate to the highest level. I now am blessed, John, to spoken and will be speaking on some of the biggest entrepreneurial stages that exist, at least in the United States, that I know of.
Yeah.
I've been blessed to run parallel to some big ass celebrities. And I've been blessed to be coached by you where people come up to me and said, that was better than the guy I came for. I came for that, but I was served by you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you. And there's one more thing. Our relationship has transformed from an extraordinary coach to also an extraordinary friend. I'll never forget our trip to Denmark, just bullshitting up in those stupid life chairs in the middle of a woods. Like, that doesn't even make sense to me.
Yeah.
But where we're sitting and just laughing and joking. I'll never forget the breakfast. We're just talking about our stupid lives, like our just pubescent lives. And
yes,
we think we're both hot shit and all the things we did.
Yeah.
I love talking about regrets and hopes and dreams. I love seeing your family, Sharon, your son, my God, run around playing drums.
Yeah.
Like, I love experiencing your home.
Yeah.
To me, that's the definition of what life's about. It's learning and giving. It's contributing, and this magic happens. That's what people got to hear, and that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. And yeah, as I said in the very beginning, you've contributed to my life in a way I just don't even have words for. And I love you, brother. It's fabulous to be in the world with you. And it's even better to be friends with you and in your life and have you in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
And listen, to everyone who's listening, I just love being a part of conversations where we can demonstrate our affinity and where we can feel it and I hope that this is a little bit of an antidote to what we kind of hear on the airwaves a lot. 'Cause I think love is the secret and it's what we need more of. And, all you need is love. And,
it's the truth, man. It's the truth. If everyone just loved everything, I don't think we'd have too many more issues. And maybe we're getting there in some draconian way.
Weird way. Yeah.
Maybe we're getting there.
Yeah. We certainly get a wake up call going on right now.
Yeah.
So it does make me really happy to know you're in the world, Mike.
Likewise, brother.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me. And thank you all very much for joining us. I'll see you next time on Speak Like a Leader, or I'll hear you, or you'll hear me next time on speaklikealeader.show. Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.